not its light, but rather its darkness. To explain what it means and what the idea of darkness and the light means in my practice, I need to talk about one of the fundamental sort of dichotomies in philosophy. That's the dichotomy between realism and idealism. And idealism is a way of thinking, is a school of thought, sort of that believes the outside reality is not independent, is not autonomous, and is always in relation to human subjectivity. On the other hand, you have realism that believes there is an outside, independent, and autonomous apart from human subjectivity. And these two main categories has different, like a gradient of ways of thinking, like schools of thoughts, from transcendental idealism to like absolute idealism. You have also on the realism side, you have like ontological realism, like epistemological realism, and so on. And one of them is actually the new trend in contemporary philosophy, that is speculative realism, which was created in 2007 in a workshop curated by Alberto Toscano. And the workshop was placed and located in Goldsmith University. During this workshop, 4 philosophers introduced their ideas and their philosophy. It was Ray Brassier, was Graham Harman, Quentin Miassou, and Jan Hamilton Grant. Each of them presented their own ways of thinking, their own sort of philosophy that was in some sense in contrast to the other 3, you know. So they all had this like sort of difference in relation to each other, but they all could sort of gather under this umbrella term that they all wanted, or they ought to criticize, which is the criticism, which is the critic of correlationism, the concept of correlationism. Correlationism is the idea that according to which we only have access to the correlation between thinking and being, and never to either term considered apart from each other. So there is always, our knowledge is always in correlation between the human subjectivity and the outside reality, right? It's somewhere in between, sort of in correlation between the two. And we cannot get out of it. And their idea is to how to get out of this sort of correlationism. Each presented their own sort of answer. And this correlationism is actually it's an outcome of Immanuel Kant's philosophy, transcendental idealism, in which he believes that we cannot acquire knowledge, the ultimate knowledge, neither through rationality nor empiricism. We cannot acquire knowledge through a priori nor a posteriori. But because actually the reason is that then he proposes 2 concepts. One is the finitude, and the other one is the thing in itself. He believes that humans are sort of trapped in their finitude, in their corporate reality, in a sense. They cannot have access to the totality of the outside reality, right? Or the thing in itself, or the world in itself, right? So there is always this sort of gap between the human understanding or the appearance and the reality outside, right? So there is this sort of a divergence, in a sense, or there is this rift between reality and appearance, or reality and representation, which leads us to this quote from Graham Harman that says, reality is not made of representations, but is what make representation possible. So there is this totality of reality that is for the most part dark, unknown, right? And then you have these representations, or you can call them the difference between phenomena and noumena, that consists of a small portion of reality, which is our understanding in a sense. And what Graham Harman does in his philosophy object-oriented ontology is that it believes that there is this finitude, right? But finitude is not only a human thing. It's not a human characteristic, right? But every object, right, has this finitude, has this sort of being entrapped, being in the confinement of finitude. And one of the most important things that I mentioned here is his redefinition of the idea of object. For him, object is not simply a physical, tangible thing. It is anything, calls objects, anything that cannot be undermined nor overmined. It's anything that cannot be undermined or reduced to its elements or parts, nor overmined, meaning reduced to its effects, functionalities, right? So for example, but this is like, as he mentioned, this is the two main tools for knowledge or science, right? To understand the outside reality, but it does not give us the ultimate reality, the absolute, in a sense, reality, the absolute truth, the essence, right? For example, if somebody asks you what is a table, you have only two options. One is that you say it is a thing that has four wooden legs with a surface on top, or you can say it is something that I put my laptop on it or my coffee cup. So in a sense, you're either undermining the table because you can, if in a case one of the legs is broken, you can easily replace it without changing the identity of the table, right? But that means an object is beyond, is always more than its sort of elements and parts. On the other hand, you can say a table is something that I put my laptop on it, but also a table can be used to start a fire or potentially kill somebody, which are these functionalities are not the primary functionalities of a table, but it's something that is in the table, It's some of the potentialities of the table. So it's also a table is not only functionality of it at that time, right? So there is this object, the concept of object with the thing in itself, with this inaccessible reality, with this potentiality that is never exhausted in between the two these two terms, Then he introduces the idea of withdrawn, because in any relation, objects withdraw from the relation. They only give us a very small sort of what he calls abstraction or distortion of themselves, of their reality, and not their totality, not their essence. Or as Tim Morton puts it, he says objects are shy, right? They're like octopuses. When we try to touch them, they swim away and they leave a trace of black ink behind. So we cannot see where they go, actually. That's how he metaphorically talks about the idea of the withdrawn. The combination of these new, like a redefinition of object and introducing the concept of withdrawn and the surplus and the potentiality, it makes the Graham Harman's, the object-oriented ontology, or in general, speculative realism's world, veered. Veered in the sense that there is a territory of the known, right? That we know, the territory of the appearance, the territory of distortions. But there is also this vast territory of the unknown, the unfathomable, the dark, the territory that is not lit by human knowledge, right? So you can see this, how this two dichotomy is just, they're like arising. They're like showing themselves now. There is always this territory of the known, the knowledge of humans, and then the territory, the vast, the dark territory of the unknown. And here's a quote by Eugene Tucker, who wrote in his book, In the Dust of the Planet, amazing book. I totally recommend it. In which he talks about, he sort of classifies our planetary object, the Earth, in three different classifications. One is the world, the Earth, and the planet. He says briefly, the argument of this book, meaning In the Dust of the Planet, is that horror is a non-philosophical attempt to think about the world without us, meaning the planet, philosophically. Here, culture is the train on which we find attempts to confront an impersonal and indifferent world without us, an irresolvable gulf between the world for us, meaning the world, and the world in itself, the Earth, with a void called the planet that is poised between the world and the Earth. It is for this reason that this book treats the genre horror as a mode of philosophy, or perhaps as non-philosophy. So for Tucker, he calls world that small portion of reality that we can understand, that lit space, that lit territory, the known territory. And then you have the world without us, meaning the huge darkest space minus that small territory that we know, right? So only the dark territory is called the planet. The dark, the unknown, the unfathomable territory. And then you have the Earth, that is combination of the both, the known and the unknown. So that's the Earth, right? Now we go to the second concept, which is the hyperstition that I need to talk about. Then I can present my artworks and my curator work. The notion of hyperstition was created by in actually CCRU, the Cybernetics Culture Research Unit, which was founded by Nick Land, Sadie Plant, and Mark Fisher. It was running from 1995 to 2003 at Warwick University. And it was a diverse group of thinkers who experimented in conceptual production by welding together a wide variety of sources: futurism, technoscience, philosophy, mysticism, numerology, complex theory, and science fiction, among others. The word cybernetics comes from the Greek word kybernetes, which means the art of steering, navigating, and governing. And their whole doctrine was to understand the way the states could govern and also create a counter narrative, in a sense, create a different destination, for the societies. Or the art of affecting organization, basically studying what is in order to bring what it is in order to bring about a new cycle, loop, narrate that we desire. Actually a new destination, right? So studying the system and creating a counter system, in a sense. So studying the narration, the narrate, the story, the dominant story, and creating your own dominant story or your own counter story. To explain hyperstition in the book Writings from 1997 to 2003, which is an amazing book, and I totally recommend it for anybody who's interested in CCRU and the idea of hyperstition. They talk about William Burroughs's story, Lemurian Time War. That is the Lemurian Time War's main subject is a story called The Ghost of Lemurs of Madagascar. It is a story written by Burroughs in 1987, and again by the pirate captain Mission sometime around 18th century. So it's written in the future and also in the past, right? Burroughs counters Mission's version in 1958 and recalled writing it in the future. Mission, who became renowned as the founder of the archaic colony of Libertatia, encounters Baruz's version in 17th century, uses it as a guide, resulting in a very strong, a story that Baruz wrote that will write in the future, right? So the story is written twice. It breaks the linear time, the lines of linear time, engendering a closed loop between future and the past. And also, it's time twining waves where mission and Baruz coincided in time, and also there is no original version. In the story, Baruz presents two ideas. That is, one is OGU, one God universe, and the other one is MU, which is the magical world. Baruz Necronomicon describes William Baruz's war against one God universe. That is a universe considered from a perspective of a single reality. That is, the universe is a representational, is linear world of objective truth and determinism, the dominant control program. It is the universe that there is only one single narrative, the dominant narrative. The relations of this are static instead of being dynamic, and there is no change, right? It's being ruled by a single entity, a single supreme entity, if you will. In Baruz's mythology, OGU emerges once MU, the magical world, is violently overthrown by the forces of monopoly. So OGU is the world of one single dominant narrative, and MU is where all the changes, the flux, the dynamism, the sort of like clashes between different gods exist. That's the chaos, the cosmos in which there is a chaos, right? The magical universe is populated by many gods, eternally in conflict. There is no possibility of unitary truth, since the nature of reality is constantly contested by heterogeneous entities whose interests are radically incommensurable. In order for OGU to work, the story that runs reality has to be believed. So for an OGU to take the power, in a sense, people must believe the narration, the story, the fiction that OGU is telling them. So there is this feeling of being believable, which means the existence of a control program determining reality. So there is this program, there is this dominant program determining the reality, and people believe it. And there's this amazing quote by Hassan al-Sabah that says, only those who can leave behind everything they have ever believed in can hope to escape. Techniques of escape depend on attaining the unbelief of assassin magician Hassan al-Sabah. Nothing is true, everything is permitted. So in order for OGU to be overthrown, in a sense, is to have a fiction from the magical universe, a grain of sort of change from the magical universe to find its way all the way, to the OGU and make people believe in this new narrative, right? That's how revolutions are created, right? It is this idea that people start believing it, and then the whole dominant system is overthrown by the people, by the counter narrative. Here, hyperstition, finally we got to the meaning of hyperstition, which means a fiction that makes itself reality. It's an idea that so many people, it's a believable idea. So many people believe in it. So it starts becoming real, starts being actualized. Hyperstition acts as a catalysis engendering future and faster change and subversion. Hyperstition refers to exponentially accelerating social transformations. Hyperstition makes history possible. Why makes history possible? Because the history is actually the process of, is a dialectical process. You have this thesis, the narration of the OGU, and then you have the antithesis that comes from the magical world, the counter narrative that leads to the synthesis. Hyperstition was as a weaponized fiction, it is the creation of a new reality, mutation or alteration of current reality. It subverts, it has this subversive sort of power to it. When a hypothetical event happens, a little break occurs. A little break, not only inside the subjectivity of humans, but also in the reality, a break into reality. Hyperstition aims for a new reality, and new reality is coming from the outside, and the outside is nowhere rather than the magical universe. Infecting reality, and at a certain point, it will bleed into the real. It's like a virus. So it's like a virus coming from the MU, in sort of infecting the brains of humans, and make the like a movement, create a movement that eventually leads to the overthrowing the dominant narrative of the system. Now I can talk about the project that I did in 2023, which is called A Deep Peek and Weird Research on the Historical Objects of Future Civilizations. So before that, so you can see the relation between the hyperstition, also the darkness and the light, and the speculative realism as well, because so this idea of hyperstition comes from that unknowability, the unfathomable, the uncharted, the untouched territory, to the territories of the known, to the territories of the human knowledge, and then it sort of helps the humans to re-territorialize and to deterritorialize and to again territorialize, So the idea of this, specifically this project, revolves around the idea of hyperstition. That is it's a story that condensed into reality, and for that matter, to be believable, to be able to create a believable story, I created this Iranian fictional archaeologist whose name is Dr. Faramaz Kehani. That's his image, actually, which I created by AI, and I'll tell you why later. Faramaz Kehani is actually an Iranian name, but it also translates into Doctor Beyond the Boundaries of Cosmos. So there is this dual meaning to it. And this is the poster of the exhibition, and you don't see my name here. So the way I presented my project was to present it as if you are going to see all the documents presented by Faramaz Kehani about this incident, this sort of story, this narration, And what is the story? What's the plot? One day in 2022, he gets a phone call from a colleague in Susa that tells him, you should come and check out this a strange new gate that we found in one of the hills in Susa. And Susa, you have to understand that it's an ancient city in Iran, full of remainings of ancient civilizations, full of artifacts, etc. But then there is this new artifact that they stumble upon, and they have no idea about the date. They don't know where it came and what's the dating and what civilization it belongs, right? So they ask Kehani to come, and he goes to Susa with two of his friends, Faraz and Hamadanian, to check out this new sort of artifact. And that's what they see. And this is the very first teleporter, the futuristic teleporter gate of Susa. And they explore the teleporter gate. They have no idea where it comes from. They cannot find the source of the light, or they cannot read the things that is written, the text that is written on the gate. So they take a sample of the teleporter gate, bring it back to maybe Tehran, and give it to carbon-14 dating process, to the laboratory, to realize when it comes from, to give them like sort of find some information about it. The story has so many details and nuances, all related to like exorcism, the history of Iran, and all these details, but I'm not gonna explain it. But long story short, after a month, he gets the call, he gets the results from the laboratory, and then he realizes that the teleporter gate belongs actually to a civilization that is going to form in 50,000 years ahead, in the future, actually. And that's when he gets another call that tells them you should come to actually Neyshabur. There is another teleporter gate appeared, and we have no idea about it. And then that's when all these teleporter gates start appearing all around the country. And that's the way I sort of installed the images. That is the map of Iran. And you can see the points there, each teleporter gate appeared, and that's one of the references of, actually one of my references to come up with the idea of the project is the image of the future by Fred Pollack. And these are some of the documents. So these are pseudo documents. I created them based on real documents, but it's presented as if Kehani created them, sort of put them together to present it to UNESCO. All these informations about the teleporter gates, and and that's the other rooms. That's Jason Babak Muhakkik's book, The Night, Philosophy After Dark, and that's a QR code. When you read the QR code, it leads you to a SoundCloud that you can read. You can listen actually to the daily, the routines, the text written by Farmas Kehani, and that is dubbed by an Iranian actor actually, who plays the role of Kehani. And this is that's a dust, and that's a dust based on the tag next to this installation. It says that's exactly the sample they brought to the carbon-14 to realize, to get the information about the dating of Susa's gate. But in fact, it's so what's the point of the project? What I'm trying to say is that all these the dates of appearance of each gate actually correlates to a certain event that was taking place during the Women Life Freedom in 2022. So the project was exhibited in 2023, but the story took place in 2022 during the Women Life Freedom movement. So with this idea, I'm creating sort of parallels between the concept of a revolution and the object of teleporter gate, as they both invite you to think of different relations within different time and space. And that's the hyperstition, that's how you think of a different world to live in. That's how you think of a different narrative, a different maybe governing system. And the reason I use the AI, these are AI generated images. The reason I use AI is because AI, the way it works is that it collects sort of the database based on actual documents of reality, right? So the project Hyperstition is sort of blurring the boundaries of reality and fiction. And also the medium of AI blurs the boundaries between an image sort of and reality as well. So the way you give a prompt to an AI, first of all, it's funny because you tell them to imagine, you tell a computer to imagine an image, right? Imagine an image of a teleporter gate in Iran. And if you change the prompt to imagine a teleporter gate in like Amazon jungle, it's gonna give you a different image. Why? Because the data it collects based on geographical data, based on real documentary, like archives and documentary data, right? So it has some sort of foot on reality, and also another foot in sort of a speculation in the unknown. It has one foot in the light territories of the known, and then the other foot in the unknown territories of the dark territories of the unknown, actually. So that's why I use this AI as a medium for this specific project, because it correlates in this sort of it correlates with the theme of the project as well. And it ended up with not me actually, Kehani and his projects, his documents being featured in a minute report in Iran International. So this is like a legit news agency outside of Iran that covers incidents and events in Iran, that created this report on the project actually believing the documents and everything. So it says, see,
There is no sound, Erfan.
oh my God, again, let me share it again. Sorry. So yeah, it became reality. It ended up being a news agency. The other project is Oruj, or Ascension. It is a trigger warning for the video that I'm going to show you, which is the documentation of Muhammad Emran Roshani, Emran Mohammadi Roshan, who actually committed a suicide in one of the sites in the petroleum sites in the south, because he was not getting paid. And I'm showing this because this was the initial this started the idea of ascension in my mind. I'll tell you why. So as you can see, these his friends, sort of mourning and crying, and these are his shoes. And that's the place he sort of hung himself, because he was suffering from like a different, like, economical hardships, basically everyday life. And this image of his shoes remaining was so captivating for me. And it actually reminded me of this very famous work by Ilya Kabakov, the man who flew into space from his apartment. I'm sure you all are familiar with the piece, and when I'm going to talk about the themes that the piece is talking about, one is the escapism and utopian longing. So the guy is he creates this trampoline as an acceleration, symbolizing acceleration, to shoot himself to that, to the another world, to this sort of promised land, to this promised utopia by the current government, which was the Soviet Union in 80s. So he actually shoots himself into a space because like the other world, from the viewpoint, from the philosophical viewpoint of Russian cosmism, the materialism and the scientific atheism that were some of the dominant discourses of the time in Soviet Russia, was a materialistic world. Another world, you could actually achieve it. You could actually go to the other world. That is a space, right? And the act is very much influenced by the Russian cosmism and the idea of like gaining immortality, scientific atheism, and materialism. That's why it gives like the scientific atheism and materialism gives the agency to the man to create this material, to put all these materials together, create this trampoline and shoot himself. Like there is this body, this corporal reality involved in the act, right? So I created based on the idea. I raised the same question, how to achieve, how to reach the other world, right? But this time in the current socio-political climate of Iran, which is the same as the Soviet Union in 80s. Raising the same question, but getting a slightly different answer. And this is my sort of installation, which touches upon the idea of escapism and utopian longing, going to the other world, but the other world, looking at the concept of other world from Islamic theology can lead you only to one thing, and that is paradise. So it is an other world, but it's not materialistic. It's more spiritual. It's immaterial, right? And the accelerationism part is symbolizes by the ceiling. So you have this like semiotics playing, right? But there are slight changes. And so it raises the question, the same question, but through a different philosophical way of thinking, hegemonic philosophical way of thinking. That for Russia, it was Russian cosmism and scientific atheism. In Iran, it's Islamic theology, it's monotheism, immortality of the spirit, and the emancipatory theology that gives you all the answers, right? And that's the room. So it was not unlike the protagonist of Ilya Kabakov. It was not his. He sort of he shoot himself into a space from his apartment. This is a motel. This is a rental room. That's the room in close to Bazaar, actually. So the way the project unfolded was that you, as the audience, you could go to this motel, talk to reception, get the keys, open the door, and this would be the space that you could stay and see the exhibition. So it was like a crime scene as well. Just like the way you could sort of experience the installation of Kabakov. You couldn't actually go inside of it. So there is this idea of like alienation in a sense, embracing alienation in a sense too. There are two questions that I had to answer for creating the installation. One, the site specificity, because why it is in a rental rather than the guy's apartment, and for me is the answer would be the socio-political and economical situations in Iran, because the housing price is extremely high, and people are not getting paid. People cannot afford actually apartments, and it's funny because when I was talking to the reception to get this room, and I told them that I'm going to because you cannot tell them that you're doing an installation. It's just too complicated for people that in a reception at a motel in the south of Tehran. So I told them that it's about a short film. It's a short film. And they say, what's the plot? What's the narrative? What's the story? And I had to create a story at the spot. So I told them that it's about a person from outside of Tehran, who lives outside of Tehran, who comes to Tehran to find a job. And after a week of search, he cannot find any. And later, in the last day, they find his body in the room. And they don't know if he committed a suicide or he was sort of killed by the agents of the regime. But that's the scene that you come up with, right? So it's a rental because the guy couldn't afford it. And then I had to have answer for all these like images, and I put nothing on the walls because for me, the walls themselves, the materiality of the walls themselves, the materiality of the walls of a motel in the south of Tehran, sort of next to Bazaar, which is a cheap hotel, does the justice. You don't need any image that resembles anything. These images are there to represent the dominant narrative of the time. And for my installation, actually, these are the walls, the bricks that are talking. The materiality, very cheap materialities that is talking. And the other one was the time of specificity. I was thinking, when should I execute? Carry out the project. And I was thinking about the different dates, but then I realized that when you live in Iran, you're always faced with this very specific term that you keep hearing. During such sensitive times، در این موقعیت حساس کنونی، در این زمان حساس کنونی, which apparently Iran has been for the past 40 something years. It has always been during such sensitive times. So I was like, well, time specificity of the project is irrelevant when you are always doing sensitive times, right? So I carried out, I was like, fuck it, I'm gonna do it this Friday. And I sent the information to some of my friends. And guess what happened 3 days before the opening of the installation? It was the day Ismail Haniya was killed in Tehran. And it's interesting to know that the guy was also a guest living in a hotel in Tehran. So it really doesn't matter if you are a person from outside of Tehran, coming to Tehran to find a job, or actually a leader of a proxy group, a proxy militant group. From within the framework of Islamic monotheism, your destination will be your promised land will be the paradise. It doesn't matter who you are. From these territories, your destination is not going to be the space. It's not going to be another planet. It's not going to be the cosmos, but rather the paradise. This is a project that I am going to actually execute. Do we have time? Didem, how we are on time?
Yes, Erfan, we have.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. The other project I'm going to exhibit in late January, is the temporary temple of Kali. The temporary temple of Kali came out of, was actually the result of my temporary residency that I had in India. It sort of touches on this idea of Black illuminationism, which I need to sort of elaborate on. Black illuminationism, that's the concept created by, again, Eugene Tucker in his article, Black Infinity, or Oil Discovers Humans. He talks about, he uses the story of Black Gondolier by Fritz Lieber. And this is the very last paragraph of the article. That says, what results then is a strange kind of epiphany, a realization that's when the protagonist faces the material of oil as an entity, you know. It faces into oil, but in a sense that it cannot fathom the oil in its totality. It fathoms it as a sort of a monster, you know. It understands it in sort of an it. That's when he faces those like uncharted territories of the unknownness, the darkness. That's when the character faces his limits on realizing what oil is, right? That's the last paragraph. And he says, it's a realization that is at its core profoundly anti-humanistic. It is not just a realization about human knowledge and its relative horizon of the thinkable, but an enigmatic revelation of the unthinkable, or really what we might call a black illumination. Black illumination leads from the human to the unhuman, but it is also already the unhuman, or one instance of the unhuman. Black illumination does not lead to the affirmation of the human within the unhuman, but instead opens onto the indifference of the unhuman. So it is when he faces the object of oil as this unhumanistic entity, and he starts, instead of saying what the oil is, starts using this epiphatic negative language. He starts talking about what the oil is not, you know, because he cannot actually fathom what the thing is. And you see the same language in Lovecraft novels when the protagonist actually faces a monster. A monster is so big that cannot be literalized, you know, it cannot be reduced to words, cannot be paraphrased. And the idea of black illuminationism is actually a counter concept to illuminationism of Sohrawardi, the Maktab Eshraq. So what he talks about is اشراق سیاه در واقع, if we want to translate it in Farsi. And Sohrawardi's idea was that comes from this very passage from Quran that says وَاللَّهُ نُورُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ, and Allah is the light of all the skies and the earth, the ground, you know. And there is a twist that Eugene Tucker creates, is that instead of facing things as lights, because light sort of resembles the known, things are unknown. Things have there is this very deep depth to things, to objects, that you cannot understand. There is this sense of inaccessibility in any object, that's the thing in it, the infamous the thing in itself, that we cannot have access to. So instead of saying things are dark, instead of saying things are like light, things are nur, right? It says these things are black, these things are dark, you know. So and let there be light, and there was light. Yes, exactly. So God has always been sort of parallel, you know, sort of symbolizes by the idea of light. But then if we look at it from the framework of a speculative realism, things are not light, things are not knowable, but rather dark and unknowable, unfathomable. For that matter, I'm creating this idea of the temporary temple of Kali. And Kali is one of the most powerful and reverse deities in Hinduism, associated with destruction and time. Kali in Hindu, actually, in Sanskrit, means two things. One is darkness, it's a dark mother, and also time. So the idea is that's me during my residency. Actually, that's not the residency, that's Taj Mahal. Me in Taj Mahal, and then that's the statue that I brought with myself to Iran, the statue of Kali, Ma Kali, the Dark Mother, and the one that controls time, to the monotheistic lands of Islam, which means Iran. So it's literally bringing an idea that here Kali is the hyperstition, bringing Kali from the world of many gods, the Hindus have like bazillion gods, actually bringing a god or an idol, an image of a god that's created with the materials of India, bring it to Iran and giving a temporary temple, creating a temporary residency now to another god within the territories of Islamic regime, within the territory of one God universe, the monotheistic God. So it's an act of invitation of another God to occupy a space in the territory of one monotheistic God or Allah. It's a way to create a dialectical dialogue, or rather a collapse or a clash. It talks about it creates like a sort of a clash between the single voice narrative and the multi-perspective worldview, single totality, fragmented realities, and unity versus multiplicity. So all these, or the OGU versus the MU. That's Kali represents MU, and Allah actually representing OGU. They have so many things in common. They have one thing in common, so many things and not in common. Kali is the Dark Mother, and Allah is the God of light. Kali is a woman, Allah is a man, right? And Allah is the omnipresent, ubiquitous, monopoly, has the monopoly of all causalities in any relation. On the other hand, Kali is one of the many gods. She is powerful, but she's one of the many gods, right? But they have one thing in common, and that is time. Both control time, and that is actually the battle is battle over time, over future. The future that hopefully is going to have a multi-perspective worldviews, and is not a sort of single narrative. I'm going to briefly talk about my curatorial practice, the Tehran Summit and the Tehran Biennial, and then we can go to the Q&A. I co-founded the Tehran Summit with a friend of mine who's an amazing artist, Ghazal Ratbe, in 2022, to create a sort of a bridge, between the art scene of Iran and the international art scene, and the contemporary dialogues, in which I'm inviting, due to the travel restrictions, I'm inviting artists to carry out the talks and lectures using Zoom and online platforms, because they cannot actually come to Iran. And Tehran Summit and also the Tehran Biennial has two predecessors. One is the Jashan al Shiraz, and the other one is the Tehran Biennial, the inaugural Tehran Biennial. Jashan al Shiraz was an event that was taking place, that was held from 1967 to 1977, and it was taking place in Shiraz, and which that's, I think, Mers Cunningham. I think so. Mers Cunningham was one of the people that was invited for the Jashan al-Shiraz. And so many amazing artists, radical artists, and avant-garde artists was invited to Iran to carry out their most radical art projects. Amazing festival. People like John Cage, Mers Cunningham, Peter Brook, Grotowski, Robert William, and Sandra carry out projects and did performances, musics, everything. And but it was halted, sort of. And also the Biennale was created by Marcus Gregorian. After him visiting the Venice Biennial, he came back to Iran and he saw the opportunity. And both of the events were supported by Shaban Farah and the Pahlavi dynasty. So, and then both of them were sort of halted and sort of canceled by the revolutionaries and right after the revolution. But then I'm sort of I'm sort of like reincarnating in a sense their soul, putting them in this young radical body and creating uh, events that do the same, bringing artists from around the world, revolutionary radical artists from around the world to introduce the art scene of Iran to some of the most important contemporary philosophical and also movements in the aesthetics. And I'm, for the most part, focusing on socially engaged art practices. So these are some of the invited speakers for the past 3 years, 2, 3 years. Yeah, no, yeah, three editions. And this is the last one which I did. So it's taking place every May. And I curated the Tehran Biennale in 2023, inviting 7 Iranian artists carry out the projects. 6 was in Tehran and 1 was in Ahvaz. So I visited the Sharjah Biennale in 2023, and I was inspired by it. It was an amazing experience. I came back and I told my friends that if they would like to participate in this new sort of an hyperstition, coming from another world, Tehran Biennale. They all agreed, hopefully. So we did it. This is the one-line statement of the Biennale. We have always been running from the streets to which we've always belonged. That's the tweet that went viral during the Women Life Freedom. And this is, so I created this map on which you can see the approximate locations of each project in Tehran and in Ahvaz, right? So you could go and you could actually call the artist and tell them you're interested to see the project, and then they would give you the address and the date and everything so you could visit. That's the project done by Bar Sabet. That's the Flowers of Iran. It's an installation next to the infamous Evin prison. It's sort of it's in honoring the memory of Iranian political prisons and detainees in Iran. That's a project desperate move by Farid Shabani. It took place on the White Bridge in Ahvaz. This is a project by Atafa Moini, and that's Hamid Amlashi's photo book. And they're both so Atafa's was called One Balcony and Six Windows. It was a story of the streets from the viewpoint of a balcony in a sense, and also it was a way for Moini to document everyday life of Iranian women during their like daily lives, and sort of documenting and amplifying their unheard voices. Also, Hamid Amlashi created this photo book of narrating all the events that was taking place from 2008 to the most recent uprisings in Iran from the viewpoint of French pastry. And that's a project by Meraki by Razal Jahanbean, which sort of included creating ephemeral art objects, installing them in different parts of Haftati, talking about immigration and ephemerality and memories, etc. And that's a project by Narges Mostafalouiy, Geslu, which was a Sai sound walk. She used the site as an excuse to talk about all these like social and political subject matters, because Sai Park is a park next to the morality police headquarters. That's the place where Mahsa Amini was actually killed. So she chose the site and asked you to create this peace sign while you are walking. And then you have these headphones on so you can hear her. and is talking about all these like narratives about the park and also the personal narratives, things that has happened to her. And then as you walk around, you realize that you actually cannot sort of draw this peace sign because the side park is not just. There are all these like levels and stairs that and keeps you from actually drawing like a very clear peace sign. And the last project was done by this rock band 1681 that brought sort of the experience, this musical experience that transcends traditional boundaries in Iran. So yeah, that was it.
Wow, Erfan, thank you very much for your
Absolutely.
very intensive presentation. Does anyone have any questions to Erfan? No one?
Okay, I can jump in. Hey, how are you?
Hi,
Uh,
Irma. Go on.
okay, actually, I have several of them. So I can start with, we also can think the history in Ogu and Mu or in changing the figures, like Syrian characters would stay the same, but the concept changes, if this makes sense. Like we can change the god with West and we can make it somehow anti-colonialist way instead of the religion perspective. I really
Yeah,
like that idea. I will
yeah,
definitely
yeah,
focus on that.
yeah. Yeah, you mean like taking the idea of hyperstition and put it in like a creating a fusion with post-colonialism?
West is representing themselves or selling themselves like God. We are the best. We don't have any mistakes or blah, blah, blah. And East is a poor people who don't have culture, etc. So we have to make them intelligent or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of makes sense.
We,
Yeah,
we can change the narrative and we can still stay in the same history.
yeah, yeah. Creating counter history or counter archive, if you will.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. That's possible.
So I have another question. You showed the shoes and you said it was really intense for you. Uh, do you left the shoes outside the entrance door after a person dies?
What do you
In reality,
Turkey, we left shoes out of the entrance door when a person dies to show that this
we
person
don't
left
yeah.
that house.
Okay. Like the house. No, we don't. I don't think we do that.
yeah, it's kind of a traditional thing in Turkey, but I think not everyone knows it, like because some
I
of
think,
my friends, I told them, they say that they just heard about first time.
huh,
Seriously?
Yeah.
Uh-uh.
interesting.
Yeah, it's kind of traditional things that, like if someone else died, we left the shoes on the outside of the apartment. And, like some of the poor people or some people can take it.
It's interesting though because it is the shoes that becomes the materialistic symbol for the guy who just passed away,
Mm-hmm.
and not
We have
necessarily.
like like maybe you heard about it, uh Hrant Dink's story. We also
Oh,
know
yeah.
him from his shoes as well.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I
And
think.
and it also has this sort of religioustic theological connotation to it because like Moses leaves its
Mm-hmm.
shoes behind bef before visiting the God.
Uh-huh.
right? So maybe there is a reason that even like in Turkey and also in Iran, you have this idea of like leaving the shoes behind before meeting literally the God, meaning the suicide or the death.
Mm-hmm. But I really like the idea of that you are comparing with Kabakov's story and you are creating kind of same, like the image of it,
Yeah, that's the same, like
Impressive.
the same formula with a slightly different answer. Yeah. Yeah.
And also, I remember that Deniz Gezmiş and all the leftists from that period, 60s and 70s, when there was leftist executions in Turkey, they were always leaving their boots behind. Like these will be what remains from me. Give those shoes to my father. They had those wills or such things.
Interesting. And it also symbolizes like walking and developing and going forward. Like shoes. That's
Yeah.
how you walk, There's so many like things associated with the idea of shoes.
Also, you're taking off your shoes while you're entering the mosque.
Yeah. Because you're visiting the God.
Yeah. So I have another question. I'm sorry. Is there any other questions?
That's fine.
So if God is light according to the Islamic philosophy and God created the light according to the Bible, does that mean God created itself like a serpent eating its tail? Because the God is same.
So God created light, and then what was the rest of it?
Okay. You said, according to the Islamic philosophy, God is light. According to the Bible, God created the light. So God created itself, and it is being like a serpent eating its tail.
Okay, so the thing is, these are two different philosophical and like religious frameworks. And now I'm like reading more on like Islamic theology and its relation and its difference actually to the Christianity and all these like different like paradoxes within these two frameworks. The thing is, for Islam, God has this absolute externality, right?
Yeah.
God creates the everything out of nothing. That's why it is. So it stands sort of, there is like a gap between God and the world. But in Christianity, you have the God that actually creates, and then you have Jesus that is the Son of God. So these are
But
different
Islam
ways.
also accepts this story.
Do they?
They do. Islam is not calling Jesus the Son, but accepting the general story.
I mean, I think, I don't know, except the fact that it's the Son of God, but it's not the same God, I would say. God is not Allah. These are two different entities.
Yeah.
One being called God. Because that's the relation between Jesus and God is son and father, but the relation between Muhammad and Allah is that he not even talks to God like directly. He gets all the text from
the angel.
The angels, So there is always this like gap, this distance between even Muhammad and God. There's no father-son relation. So God stands in this pure isolation toward everything that we touch it. That's why it's called Islam, meaning submission, because everything that we touch is created by God and therefore belongs to God.
Yeah, but also in Buddhism, like you have to become the light.
you have to become the light in Buddhism. I
Yeah.
mean, I would say these are different
Yeah, but
religions.
you know, all of these things are coming together and
They-
connecting to each
There
other.
are, in some senses, I would say yes, but they're not the same thing.
Yeah.
But
But
yeah, that
in
would
the
be
end,
my answer.
we are still in the cave period, you know.
Sure.
There was light and everyone was like, oh, the light, and we're
Yeah.
still at the same position.
Yeah. I might have different answers a year from now because I just started reading like religious like theology, like Islamic theology and stuff. But for now, my answer is that yeah, the sun God relation and also the externality part.
Have a look at Rumi.
Thanks for your questions, Irmak, and thank you, Erfan, for your very intense, presentation. Does anyone have any questions, or should we stop here? I think no one has questions. Thank you again, Erfan, for
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. Thanks for inviting me. I'm so
Very
glad that I participated. Amazing project, amazing work. Congratulations, Didem and Nancy, for doing this. Yeah, it's amazing.
Oh, Nancy. Yeah. Nancy, you are muted.
No, I think. Okay. I wanted to thank you also. I've been trying to understand these concepts you talked about. I still not sure I understand, but I think I have a little peep now that I didn't have before I listened to you. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much.
Just a little more knowledgeable than I was. You're amazing. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right.
Mhm.